Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Sela's Social Studies. Today we're going to be taking a look at two events that affected the North Carolina economy post-Revolutionary War. So if I were to ask you about the first gold rush, what immediately comes to mind? No doubt the state of California and the 49ers is the first thing that a majority of people think of. The 49ers were from the gold rush of 1849 from California, hence the name 49ers. So, not to mention that the first American gold rush happened nearly 50 years prior and on the other side of the country. If you don't know, gold is a precious metal that is found in nature in a couple of different forms. It can be found as flakes or nuggets in streams, and as well as veins and minerals like quartz. In the late 1790s, spread throughout the Piedmont and mountain regions of North Carolina, gold veins were discovered, sparking a gold rush that brought a population rush into the state of North Carolina. In 1799, the first authenticated discovery of gold was discovered on the farm of John Reed in Caribous County, east of Charlotte. 4 years later, in 1803, the Reed gold mine was established. And when gold is discovered, it is very hard to keep that news under wraps. So when gold was found at Reed's farm and other locations across several North Carolina counties, the news was celebrated in newspapers across the world. Just like the more famous California gold rush, miners across the world immigrated to North Carolina to buy land and sift through riverbeds for surface gold deposits. Farmers who lived throughout the region made large amounts of money by selling the mineral rights to their farms, and some farmers even sold the whole farm to ambitious speculators who were willing to risk it all to find the next major lode. The North Carolina gold rush peaked between the years of the 1830s and 1840s, with lode deposits being found on the land of Tobias Barringer and other mines that popped up across the state. Over 50 mines popped up across the western part of the state, with boom towns springing up to accommodate the population rush. Union County's Smart Mine was operational between 1835 and 1911. And the Howe mine was in service for over a century between 1840 and 1942. The original mine, Reed's Gold Mine, stayed in operation until 1912. Reed's Gold Mine was so successful that the Charlotte Mint was established in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was added to the U.S. National Register of Historic Places on October 15, 1966. Between the years of 1804 and 1846, Reed's gold mine was said to have yielded over $1 million worth of gold, and throughout the mines in the state, an estimated $25 million of gold was excavated from the land. The gold belt of North Carolina produced the nation's gold supply from 1803 until 1848, when the much larger California gold rush took the top spot. Up until 1829, North Carolina was the only state producing the gold for the national gold supply. So when someone asks you where the first gold rush in the United States was, you can respond that it was right here in the great state of North Carolina. The other thing we're going to talk about is a negative on the North Carolina economy and this North Carolina post-Revolutionary War economy. So to explain this section and how it discusses the North Carolina economy, how it was doing after the Revolutionary War, you must understand the story of Rip Van Winkle. Rip Van Winkle was written by Washington Irving and discussed or described a Dutch colonist who before the Revolutionary War drank some strange liquor and fell asleep in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. He awoke years later with a long beard and observed that his village had changed. Most of his friends died in the war, and King George was no longer controlling the colony. Rip Van Winkle was comatose for years, not moving or making any progress in life. That could be said for the state of North Carolina after the Revolutionary War. Now, Rip Van Winkle was a derogatory name given to the state of North Carolina from the turn of the 19th century until 1835. The significant reasons that the state was regarded so poorly was because North Carolina was so undeveloped. It was so backward and indifferent to its condition. There was a lack of infrastructure. In the early 1830s, it was stated that North Carolina did not even trade with foreign countries. It didn't have seaports or a staple crop to sell. North Carolina lacked a communication system, whether it be by canal, rivers, or roads, and an agricultural product to manufacture or sell. Think of a pond where there's no water movement and there is algae growing on the surface. The water is still and stagnant. That's what North Carolina was like. Now, politics had a significant impact on this state as well. The Democratic Party in the state was not concerned about economic or social or cultural improvements. Fortunately for North Carolina, the Rip Van Winkle period in history was short-lived. Lasting between 1800 and 1835, there were 3.5 decades of constant decline. Now, in 1835, a constitutional convention was held in North Carolina, and a modification to the old North Carolina Constitution of 1776 was amended. In the new Constitution, there were a series of constitutional reforms that helped spur a period of growth lasting about 25 years. These reforms included building a system of plank roads and railroads, and support for statewide public schools and higher education, improvement in manufacturing and agricultural conditions, and a revamped tax system. These improvements allowed cities like New Bern and Wilmington to become thriving commercial areas and allowed the backcountry rural western areas aid for internal improvements. So we could see that after the war, North Carolina had its up and downs, especially in the east. You had this gold found in the Piedmont, the central part of the state. It really pushed the economy for a while. But then we had a Democratic Party that was so indifferent that it didn't care what we did. It didn't care if we had large crops of tobacco to sell. They didn't even matter about the western parts of the state. So now we have to go forth and create these constitutional reforms that will help North Carolina get out of this funk, this Rip Van Winkle part of its economic history. I'll see you next time.